So the first thing you need to understand is your brain works in two ways. I mean, it's one way, but it has two steps. So step one is you studying something, and then you basically, when you get that information, it's you encode it, you put it in your head. That's the encoding part of it. Once you do the encoding part of it, this you could do this from maybe listening to a lecture, maybe reading from a book, maybe asking ChatGPT questions, maybe seeing someone else solve a problem. That's how you encode information. That's how you put information into your brain. The second part is where you apply that information. So your brain works in two ways. It takes information, encodes it, and then it applies that information. And both of those two ways, you need to have a proper method of doing both of those two things, because you will be, when you're in the exam, you're not only just recalling that information that's been encoded, but you're also applying that. So if information has not been encoded properly, you may forget that. And if information you don't know how to apply that information, then you may be able to recall it, but you don't know how to combine it in a way that's useful to you. So that's how information works. So the question is, how do you do that? How do you practice encoding, and how do you practice applying? So the easy way to do that is, well, encoding is very personal. You can't just, go on YouTube and be like, how do I learn? That depends on you. That depends on the person you are. Do you find it easier to read stuff off of a book? Do you find it easier to pick stuff up when you hear someone else talking about it? Do you find it easier when you keep on asking questions and then you understand that stuff? That's a really personal process. You need to know how encoding works best for you. So you have to experiment with all of those things, and you have to find out the way that works best for you. There's no sort of one simple way that it could work for everybody. For me personally, it worked by a combination of asking questions and listening to other people talk about it, and reading books as well. It was a combination of all of those three things. So that's the first thing. Find out what kind of encoding do you like to do. That's the first thing. You have to figure that part out. Once you figure that part out, what do you need to encode? There's so much information, right? How do you know that you're not wasting your time encoding irrelevant information in your brain, and you only are getting information that's going to be useful? How do you figure that out? Well, that's why you sort of have the syllabus content. You can basically search syllabus math A-level 9709 and it will pop up. And basically you click on that syllabus, and then you scroll down, and then you look at those topics: trigonometry, integration, differentiation. You look at those topics and you see what you need to know. And there are these bullet points, or whatever you want to call them, and then they tell you what you need to know. It says something like the candidate needs to be able to do this, describe this, apply this. That's how it's usually stated. For different subjects, it's going to be different, but that's how you understand, okay, this information is useful. This is relevant. This is what I have to encode. All of that other stuff, if you open a book has a lot of different stuff in it. When you go to a lecture to your teacher, they're going to talk about a lot of different things. You have to encode the information that the syllabus wants you to encode, and leave all of the rest of the stuff away. Okay, so let's say we're talking about trigonometry, and you're looking at those bullet points, and let's say there are 5 bullet points, and you've encoded the first bullet point. What do you do now? Let's say we're going back to O-level math. Let's say you go into the trigonometry section, and the first bullet point says you need to know that sine theta is equal to perpendicular over hypotenuse, and you just now the syllabus says that you need to know that, and you need to be able to apply it. So you've done the first part. Now you know it. You've encoded that formula in your brain. And yes, you do have to learn that formula. The syllabus says you need to know it, so you have to learn it. This is the encoding process. Now you have to apply it as well. How do you apply it? Now this is where you have to be really careful. When you encode a new piece of information, you do not want to practice questions that are going to be of a really advanced level. And these types of questions usually are questions where they combine multiple topics into one question. So let's say it's a triangle, right? And in that triangle, you're not just applying sine. You won't just be applying that sine concept, but you will be applying some angle concepts as well, some symmetry, congruency concepts as well, some Pythagoras theorem as well. You do not want to do those questions. You just encoded one thing, right? And that was basically what sine theta is. So the question you want to practice, this is really important. The question that you want to practice after you encode one bullet point are questions that are relevant to that bullet point, that are not advanced, that are simple, basic questions that will cement that bullet point, that will teach you how to use that encoded information into practice, how to apply that encoded information into practice. This step is really important. If you jump directly to the advanced questions, you will not be able to learn this sort of application process. Why? Because your brain is going to be way more focused on how all of these concepts connect together in the bigger picture, how the Pythagoras theorem sort of helps you into figuring out the sine part, sine theta part. So you don't want to do that. You want to keep it as simple as possible. So let's say you've now encoded that sine theta in your head, you've encoded the formula, you've applied it, you had a simple triangle, a basic problem, you've applied that, you're done. Thing is, where do you find those basic problems? Either you go and ask ChatGPT, you just put in that syllabus content bullet point into the prompt and you go ahead and ask him to generate a simple problem for you. Or what I did back in the day was basically we had books, we had textbooks, and at the end of the textbooks, they basically had, at the end of the chapters, they had these questions. You go from basic to intermediate to advanced. So I went ahead and I practiced those problems before jumping on to the past papers. This process of practicing simple questions at first and then practicing the more advanced questions is really important. And yeah, do not practice topicals or do not practice yearlies just after you've done one topic or one concept, because topical questions are usually really advanced. They usually combine concepts from different chapters. They usually combine concepts from different topics. So they're not just basic questions that will help you encode that simple concept that you've learned. This is just like laying a building's foundation brick by brick. So you have to sort of lay down the foundations, the basic level. Then on top of that basic level, the more intermediate stuff comes. And then after that, you know, the more advanced stuff follows. So it has to be in a structured way. Once you've encoded that information, once you've gotten those bricks, now you have to lay down those bricks and you have to layer them. You have to practice the basic stuff, the intermediate stuff, the advanced stuff. Do not challenge yourself by those advanced questions right after you've picked up on a really small topic or a really small concept. So don't do that. Once for, let's say, one bullet point or one topic or one chapter, you've done the encoding part and you've done the application part. Now you want to look at the chapter as a whole. You want to look at the topic as a whole. You want to practice all of those. You want to have a question where all of those concepts are going to be tested. How do you do that? I guess this is the time where you should refer to the topicals, where you should head on to the topicals. So let's say if I'm talking about math and I'm talking about trigonometry specifically, now I want to go to those topical questions that are going to involve all of those concepts that the syllabus wanted me to learn from the trigonometry chapter. Now is the time where all of those concepts, they're going to interlink all of those concepts. And so my brain will basically be working with all of that encoded information and all of those individual concepts that I've applied. Now I sort of have to join those concepts together and see how I can use each and every single one of those concepts and apply them in a way which answers a more complex question. That's what you have to do. So step one was encoding the information, reading the bullet point, encoding the information. Step two was learning how to apply it. The basic stuff first, the more advanced stuff later on. Once you've done this for all of the bullet points for, let's say, one topic, now you can jump to the topicals and you start doing those problems. When you're doing topicals, you are going to come across two things. One of them is going to be that you are unable to answer a question because you didn't know what the question was talking about. You just didn't understand. You didn't know that such a thing existed. Or you are going to know what was going on with the question. It's just that you weren't able to find that or sort of connect those certain dots that the question required you to connect. If it's the first thing, if it's the first problem, if you didn't know what was going on with the question, if you didn't understand, if you missed something that was in the concepts but you didn't learn it, then you have to go back to the concepts. You have to cement the concepts. That's an encoding problem. You didn't encode something right. If it's the second part, if you did know what the question was talking about, but you just weren't able to connect the dots, then that's a problem-solving application problem. That just means that you have to do more topicals. For now, you have to open up those yearlies. The first part is done. The yearlies part is, you're on the yearly part now. How do you approach the yearly part? As I said, you have to fight against time and you have to fight against your psychology and your ego. How do you do yearlies? How do you attempt yearlies? You are going to put that yearly paper in front of you and you're going to put the time, the exact time that is specified on the top of the paper. You're going to set the time, put the phone or the timer right beside you, and you're going to start doing the paper. This is really important. You have to do the questions that are repetitive. So repetitive questions are questions that you've seen over and over in your topicals, that you look at the question and you know what you have to do. You look at the question, you know how to attempt it. You have to do the repetitive questions first. I'll do the repetitive questions, spend some time on them, finish all of the paper, do the repetitive questions. You're going to have some time left at the end when you're done with all of the repetitive questions. You have to allocate this time to the questions that were not repetitive, that you didn't get right off the bat that involved a lot of thinking process and whatnot. You have to look at those questions now in that some amount of time left. So you open up those questions, you think about them a little bit, see if you can figure them out or not. If you cannot figure out, let's say there were two questions that involved a lot of thinking and you cannot do one of them, that's okay. Go on to the next one, try attempting that. Maybe you'll get that down. So the last part that you have, that last time that you have, you're trying to save that time to do the questions that were not repetitive, that were new questions, that involved you to think in a different way that you had not maybe thought before when you were doing topicals. It's okay to not be able to do these questions right. It's okay to not be able to crack these questions down. It's okay to get these questions wrong. There are always going to be questions that you will not be able to do. Doesn't matter if you're giving math, doesn't matter if you're giving science, there's always going to be something new that they add into the paper that you're just not able to do, and that's okay. That's why you have the threshold. So if you're not able to do it, other kids are not able to do it as well. It's not that you're just, if you've done everything right, then if you're still not able to do it, then that's a good chance other kids are not able to do it as well. So you have to fight against your ego. You have to tell yourself, okay, if I can't do this question, it doesn't mean I didn't study. It doesn't mean that I'm not smart. It doesn't mean I'm not intellectual. You have to fight your ego and you have to do those questions. You cannot spend time thinking negatively about the question you did wrong or the part you got wrong or any of the stuff like that. Then comes time. Of course, you have to do your entire paper in that certain time limit. So that adds that pressure onto you, that exam pressure, that sort of exam fear that people have. And it's a ticking clock. You have to do everything within that ticking clock. So it's going to take some practice, but when you do 2 or 3 papers, you will sort of understand how much time you can sort of, give to a question and how, when should you start, moving on to the next question and whatnot. So that's where the yearly part comes in. So let's say you've done the yearlies with the timed practice, with everything. And now what you have to do is you have to pop out the marking scheme for that specific yearly you did. Once you pop out the marking scheme, you have to grade yourself in that paper. Once you've graded yourself, what you want to do is you want to open the threshold of that year and you want to see what was the grade that you got. And if you are getting your desired grade, then that's really good. You just have to maintain it for 5 or 4 more yearlies. You have to do 4 to 5 more yearlies and you have to see and make sure that you are maintaining your desired grade. You cannot just be like, okay, I did a paper from 2020, I got a B, I got an A, I'm happy, I'm not going to do any more yearlies. No, that's not it. You have to maintain that specific grade for 4 to 5 yearlies. You have to check their threshold, you have to grade yourself, and you should be getting your desired grade. Now, if you're not getting your desired grade, it's either that you're lacking in a specific question every time, not a specific question, but a specific topic. So let's say we're talking about physics, and let's say the topic you're lacking in is gravitation or circular motion. And you've seen that when you did this yearly, when you did that yearly, when you did the other yearly, you were always doing something wrong in the gravitation or the circular motion part. What does that mean? Well, that means either 2 things. Either you didn't know what the question was talking about, or you did understand what the question was talking about, but you just weren't able to connect all of that information in a way that answered the question. If it's the first part, concept, you have to go back and you have to see what you were not encoding. You have to encode that information again. If it was the second part, you weren't able to connect all of those concepts, then that just means you need to do more topicals. And of course, doing more topicals, I'm already assuming that you've done the layering up part. The layering up part is really important. If you layer up properly and you don't just go to the past papers, you will save yourself a lot of time. Why? Because it's really difficult to encode all of the information at once and then directly jump to the topicals and try and apply all of that information, those different concepts from different backgrounds, all at once to answer a question. It's way easier and way less time taking if you do one concept at a time, learn how to apply it at the same time, and then you do a different concept, learn how to apply that, then a third one, learn how to apply that, and then sort of connect all of them in a cohesive way. So that's really important. So that's how you will know what you're doing wrong in your yearly. If you are doing a question wrong, if it's a conceptual problem or if a problem-solving problem. That's one of the things that you could be facing with. Another thing that you could be facing with is time. Now, you are somehow not able to do all of those questions in the required amount of time. That is really important as well. If you can't do that, then again, there's either 2 things. You are either your ego is getting the best of you and you're not able to sort of move on from the questions. You keep on thinking about, why did I mess that question up? Why did I think that question up? When you're giving the exam, when you're doing a yearly, your job is not to think about what you did right, what you did wrong. That's the job of the examiner. Your job is to do the paper. So you should focus on doing the paper. That's all your job is. Once it's done, now you could regret on it, think on it as much as you want. But when you're doing it, your focus should be on doing the paper. If you can't do everything in time, then you need to get your hand speed up. You need to figure out what the repetitive questions are. They will have, they usually have a pattern. You will see that these are some repetitive questions. You have to identify them. You have to, when you go through the paper at first, you have to identify those repetitive questions that you look at, and you instantly know how to do them because you've seen a similar question in the topicals. Those will be the repetitive questions you have to do. You have to mark them maybe and do those repetitive questions. Leave the more thinking questions, the more questions you have to ponder over, leave those questions for the end. Do them in the time that you have left. So that's it for this video. That's basically going to be your strategy for how you have to sort of prepare such that you get your A's and your A stars. It's all about encoding that information, right? This can be done through lectures, ChatGPT, books, whatever you want. Second part is layering up how to apply those concepts one by one concept at a time, then another one, and then doing the topicals so that all of those, you know how to apply all of those concepts at the same time. Once you've done that, you have to do it for all of the topics. And only then can you jump on the yearlies, and yearlies will truly test your ability to not just join concepts from the same chapter, but to join concepts from different chapters to solve a problem and work with time and work against your ego. So that's what the yearly will allow you to do. If you do all of these steps honestly and you put your heart and soul into it, then nothing can stop you from getting that A star or whatever your desired grade may be.